classical and contemporary sociological theories. How can we make a distinction between these two categories? Some can be considered as classical and others might be considered as, let's say, contemporary. So we see that there is no clear demarcation between these two categories. We cannot give exactly a date that on one side of that date, all those theories which were, let's say, propounded earlier could be considered as classical and others could be considered as contemporary. So Parsons' work might be considered as a dividing line. Sometimes people think about that, but certainly we see that Parsons considered the works of Weber and Durkheim as classic. When people are looking at Parsons' work, that work itself might be considered as classical from other angles. So we see that this classical may be looked at from four angles. We might see that there could be four meanings. One is that it has stood the test of time. We are still interested in it. That a particular theory has been propounded. It is still persisting, but we see that it is so classical that we see that it is still applicable to the new situations. So Parsons may fall in this particular category. Secondly, classical that resonates contemporary work means it gives a guideline to the present work. It gives orientation. It gives an approach to the contemporaries, let's say academicians, to pursue the academic, let's say, knowledge. So Parsons' functionalism in that respect might be considered as classical. So we see that his functionalism has been looked at from a variety of angles, and we come across new names as well. Thirdly, work as classical when there have been new developments since it was written. Now, it does not mean that work is outdated. It simply means that maybe it was, let's say, applicable at that time. We see that new things have emerged. So new perspectives and debates have been added to particular perspective with which they started. So these were not, let us say, considered earlier, and the earlier theory or earlier perspective might be considered as classical. So we don't say that it is outdated, but that might be taken as a foundation for building further structure on that. Just like the concept of functionalism, we see that from functionalism, new functionalism also comes and other concepts emerge. Marxism is there, then we see neo-Marxism also is a concept which is prevalent in the writings in the modern times. Fourthly, understand social theory in historical context. A classical theory is distinguished from contemporary theory with respect to its context. Context implies how much distance is in terms of time when we have those theories which were given in the past, let's say century back or 2 centuries back or a half a century back, and what is now. Now those theories were, let us say, propounded given the historical, let's say, perspective, historical context. The things may have changed, but the theories might still be prevalent. So identify certain theories as contemporary that share the same broad historical situation with the authors. So altogether, the situations may have changed. Lots of theories emerged when the society was, let's say, changing from agricultural to industrial society. Let's say from let's say kingship to democratic kind of system. Now, the things have changed, therefore historical context has changed. So because of that context, maybe we see that it's altogether different, and the contemporary, let's say, academicians share a certain kind of approach. So we see that the distinction between the classical and contemporary appears to be relative. So what is classical at one time, it may not be at another time. For example, Parsons might be considered as contemporary at a particular time, but then for others he might become, let's say, a classical kind of thing. So we see that in certain situations, Parsons might be considered as a dividing line between the classicals and the contemporaries. He is maybe considered as a midwife of the modern and contemporary sociology. So therefore, we see that there is not, let's say, watertight kind of distinction between contemporary and, let us say, classical. It's debatable, and that debate can continue.